Hey everybody, we're going to get started with the live in just a couple of minutes. Thought I'd kick off early. So excited for tonight. So excited for tonight. Kenobi trailer breakdown. It's going to be awesome. Enjoy the music. Hang out with me for a couple minutes. We get all ready. If you're watching, say hi in the chat. Throw it up there. We'll say hi. Chat together. It'll be all kinds of fun. Check on Ryan here. If you're already here joining us, thanks for being here. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Waiting for my co-host to get here. We're talking about the Kenobi trailer. It's going to be fun. Do that. You gotta love how this all plays out. Hey Rich, how's it going, man? My co-host Ryan was about to join and his computer locked up on him. Demo gods, technology gods, they're always playing little tricks on us. That's all right, we'll get started. Rich vibes. How you doing, buddy? It's good to see you. So if you're here for the first time, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. My co-host Ryan will be here just above me here in just a second when he gets back. And tonight we're going to be going over the Kenobi trailer. And if you're just now joining the Kessel chat for the first time ever, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. We do have a lot of fun doing this, talk about storytelling of Star Wars and all kinds of cool happy stuff. So Rich, who's here right now, is always here with us. I appreciate it, man. So yeah, we're going to break down the Kenobi trailer tonight. Should be a lot of fun. I'm super excited about it. I know I did a reaction to it on TikTok, which was kind of cool. And Rich, just so you know, I'm killing a little bit of time because Ryan's computer locked up on him, which is always funny. And I'm sure you know how that goes. Yeah, when I watched it for the first time, and I'm not going to give anything away for the show, but when I watched it for the first time, like just the amount of feels I had from when I was a kid and from teenage years, my high school years, and all these different movies were kind of coming back out again. It really hit. So I'm super excited to talk about this tonight. And if you haven't caught our shows previously, we're sort of doing this. We're calling it the Road to Kenobi. So we're doing a series of videos between now and May 25th when Kenobi releases, all kind of centered around not just Obi-Wan himself, but things that kind of the things that make up the environment that Kenobi is coming out in and the content that they've been making to relate to that. So we're going to be doing one on magic versus science, which is going to be super cool. And a few others about Kenobi himself and his backstory and just things to kind of get you situated and ready to go for the trailer. And we're hoping, if this all plays out well, we're hoping to actually do a watch party the night of the release. So that should be pretty cool, but we'll wait and see. And right now, I am just waiting for Ryan's computer to come back up. So I kept telling him I'm buying time. See, this is why we do this live, because you never know what's going to happen when you do things live. Just telling him I'm buying his time. It's all good. And I see there's a few folks joining, so thanks for being patient as we get started. Sometimes these things just happen, you know. At least it wasn't my computer and the show itself actually crashing. That would have been awkward, but that's okay. gonna wait for Ryan. We got these new tunes that are playing too, so I'm gonna hang out for Ryan for just a couple minutes. Rich, how you doing? How's your week been? And anybody else who's on right now, wherever you're coming from, throw something in the chat real quick. Let us know who you are and where you're coming from. I posted up on TikTok earlier a little video about the show tonight and shared it on Instagram and a couple other places. So, wait, Paul, are you saying you really hope the Kessel chat is good? Because, I mean, dude, you should assume. Oh, you mean, got it. You mean Kenobi. That makes more sense, right? Me too. I hope it's good too. The teaser trailer gave us just enough to be interesting. So yeah, I'm really curious. I will say, I know we'll get into this a bit in the show, but Paul, to your comment, I'm excited about the directorial choices for this series. You know, I know we've talked in the past when we did the Book of Boba Fett. That was one of the concerns we all kind of had, was the episodes where each, as they did with The Mandalorian, the episodes that were directed by different directors, like you could tell obviously when it was directed by Filoni or Jon Favreau or Robert Rodriguez, and the storytelling was vastly different in each one. And I have to say that I was disappointed with some of the directors and how they played out their stories in it. So I'm really hoping. I wanted to double check here real quick and remember. Cast and crew. Let's see here. Who was it? So Deborah Chow, when she did all the episodes she did in The Mandalorian were just stellar. The way that she puts stories on screen is just amazing. So I'm hopeful. I'm not even cautiously optimistic. I'm very optimistic. Rich said, great, just sorting things out with Sammy in the conference. Cool. Very cool. Wait, what conference? Which conference? Kenobi. I know the Kessel chat is top shelf. Thanks, dude. Okay, Ryan's coming. His computer just had to reboot. It's all good. Hopefully my phone doesn't lock up on me. At least we got plenty of good music this time around, so that's nice. And I've been playing with sound effects too, so I'm like trying to up our stream game a little bit by playing with some sound effects. Oh shoot, he's having to go through a second restart now. Oh my gosh, poor guy. Cinematographer of Batman. Let's see, what did Paul say? Cinematographer of Batman had done a couple episodes of Mando. Who was it? Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, I loved when the Mandalorian. One of the things I absolutely loved about that show is having the different directors, and they all did such a fantastic job. So when they proposed to do that again for the Book of Boba Fett, I was really excited. The idea of these different directors having different takes on different parts of the story, because the stories kind of change as they move along. Even though it was a serial, there's little segmented stories that kind of happen within themselves. So I really like that they use different directors to pull that off. But I don't know what happened, but it really, we talked about this in an earlier episode or a previous episode of the Kessel Chat, Paul, that how it played out in the Book of Boba Fett, that let me just say it frankly, the episodes that Robert Rodriguez directed in the beginning, I think it was 1, 2, and 3, felt so completely disjointed. Ryan and I talked about it, and both of us were feeling like those episodes didn't really fit within the rest of the story that was being told. So, here he comes. There he is.
Hey, sorry about that. Oh my gosh.
It's okay. The demo gods were not happy with you tonight for some reason.
No, they were not. I mean, seriously, I don't know what I did. Jeff knows this. I've been like resetting my computer to be able to join. So glad we were able to get this all sorted out.
We're here now.
Yes.
Just talking to our friends. We got Paul Burke and Rich here. I think there's some other folks on too, but that's right. Why don't we just jump right into it? Let's just jump right in. All right. Ready?
Let's do it.
We're here. This is awesome, dude. I'm excited. I was telling everybody in the chat, and then what I was saying, I did a TikTok right before this to kind of like drum up some excitement for it as well, that I actually was able to add a hashtag to TikTok that wasn't used by anyone called Road to Kenobi. I added that in there because I kind of put that in our not show notes, but our content calendar. I put it in our episode calendar. this little bar that says "A Road to Kenobi," and I'm like, ooh, that's not even a hashtag anyone's used on TikTok. Sweet, I get to add it. Nice, getting like really niche down in our content. But yeah, this is exciting. Not just because we get to do the breakdown of the trailer, and I echoed you this time. I actually sat down and got a pad of paper and I wrote down my notes on pads of paper. This is actually my drawing pad, so I have a feathered art pen that I use to draw with this thing too periodically as like a meditation. So I just grabbed that and I'm like, I'm doing Orion tonight. I'm actually writing my notes down.
Oh man, I did that too. I wrote down a ton of notes. I came ready. I almost have like time log items. But I feel like we should start. I gotta respond to some comments. I did not lose any of my dilithium crystals. I had a problem with my phase inducers. That is what happened to my computer. And but I love this comment from Paul around. He loved Robert Rodriguez and everything that was going on with. I feel like that call out is so good, especially as we're about to talk about a brand new series.
Uh-oh. Hopefully we
it's brand new here
on your video froze up there.
Oh, sorry about that.
You're okay. No, you're good. You're good.
Well, anyways, something that is we're about to talk about Obi-Wan and get into this. I feel like it's a good transition to talk a little bit about the Book of Boba Fett. And just like Paul, I mean, I was a huge fan of Robert Rodriguez. El Mariachi, Desperado, Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Yeah, like there's a Grindhouse movie that he did called Planet Terror. These are I feel like we got post-peak Robert Rodriguez, unfortunately. I mean, I'd even say that the faculty Robert Rodriguez is better. So yeah, like I'm really excited that it seems like this new Obi-Wan show, just based off the trailer, is much different, much more cinematic, which I feel like outside of the episodes that featured The Mandalorian, Boba Fett didn't seem cinematic. Boba Fett seemed very almost small, tight. I remember I kept thinking, like, why aren't these sets huge? Why does this look more cinematic? So yeah, I'm really excited about what we saw in the Obi-Wan trailer.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, let's start it off. I was going to try to find a way to bring in the actual trailer, but I started worrying about copyright stuff. I'm like, you know what? We can just talk our way through it. I watched it 3 times right before we did this episode, take some notes, and just consume it because I was just, it got my hackles up again when I was just like, whoa, like all the little goose flesh popping up because of the music. It was, I have to say that before we get into like any of the specifics, the music through the trailer. I mean, Duel of the Fates, of course, like that, like instantly, but the rest of the music is so it is chosen so well. I don't know who could listen to that and not feel like just like just motivated and excited. Just the choices were great, not just by their music themselves, but the attachment of the music to the individual scenes that were being put up for you at that moment, and how the music flowed. It fits so perfectly, and it really like hits at all of your feels when you're watching it.
So to your point about how making notes, I actually made a note of all of the songs that appear in that trailer, because just like you, I was like, when you said it like hits you, right? So when the trailer opens, the sound that it makes is actually that little kind of like chime sound.
Yeah.
That's the sound that Obi-Wan, when R2 sees Obi-Wan over Luke, and at the point, like, it's right as Obi-Wan pulls back his hood and says, "Hello there."
The original hello there.
Yeah, the original hello there. And it's this really great sound. It almost immediately, right when I heard it, I was like, oh gosh, like this is so great. This is exactly like, and he's like in the desert, and he's kind of, you know, he's riding I want to call it an Epona, but I know that's the horse from Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. But he's got the little, you know, beast of burden that he's traveling with, and you hear that little ding, and then the next cut is to Duel of the Fates, and then the next cut after that is the Battle of the Heroes, which is the song that's played behind Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting, goes back to Duel of the Fates, goes to the theme that's used when Anakin, the Sacrifice of the Jedi, which is like the theme that's being played while the Jedi are being massacred in Episode 3. And it's such, all of these things are so like, they are these songs are attached to the Obi-Wan identity more than anyone else. From the opening music, which is the very first thing we've ever heard when we ever see Obi-Wan, to Duel of the Fates, where he becomes a Jedi Knight and defeats Darth Maul, to the Battle of the Heroes, where, as he says, they lost the fight. This is all of the music choices there actually reflect so much of the character. They're not random. And I guess that when I heard that, I remember thinking immediately, like, oh wow, that's a lot of promise. Like, I'm so excited about the Obi-Wan trailer just because it looks like they put a lot of intention in the music that's in the trailer.
The parallels in the scenes that lead up to him saying the fight is done. Not just the music, but at that moment when he says on the screen, it says the fight is done. What we see in that moment is it cuts from him walking into the town, Mos Espa, let's assume, or Mos Eisley, who knows. But he cuts him walk in there, and then the fight is done. And then the next scene, we see him under a tent, cleaning some parts. And immediately I connected the music in the opening to that scene, and I'm like, there's Rey. There's Rey from The Force Awakens. Not just the music at the opening for her when she's on the planet, kind of sits up by herself, has her stuff together. She's in the Star Destroyer that's crashed on Jakku. And all that's happening, like the music that's kind of playing is sort of very subtle and just almost more sound effect than music at that point because how subtle it is. But then she getting into town and cleaning her own parts and doing that, it very much connected the amount of loneliness or just aloneness between Obi-Wan and Rey. But what was interesting for me is that when he says the fight is done and then we lost and he kind of stops, what that feels like to me is Rey in her scene is very much, she's not resigned to her thing. This is just her life. She doesn't, she remembers, she has dreams of being a baby and like, or a little kid, no, where are you going? But that's it. She doesn't know who that was. She just remembers that being a thing. But this is her life. With Kenobi, he remembers his entire life. So it's like this, it's this aloneness that he has that he is trying to reckon with. And the note that I put down was, you get a sense of either resignment or of giving up, but nearly giving up. Like he hasn't yet, but he hasn't quite resigned himself to what he's doing, or he's almost given up on, but he hasn't quite. Like something is, he knows he's got a mission. He knows he's got a thing going on, but like the way that scene played out for me very much felt like, and the expressions on his face, like, I know what I need to be doing here and I'm going to keep doing it. But it's almost like, I feel like we almost get to a place, we're probably going to get to a place where we see him almost sort of like, rinse, wash, repeat sort of thing for a little bit in the beginning as he's sort of like battling with, I don't really want to be doing this anymore. I get nothing else to live for. Sort of I'm very curious to see how that sort of, how we see him in the very beginning. And I really hope it's almost sort of it just starts out for a while without him talking and walking the beast of burden and doing these daily activities like Rey did in the beginning of The Force Awakens, where she doesn't have to talk, doesn't have to do anything. She just does her thing and then goes back to her life. And we get to see that, like, I'm resigned to my fate. Here I am.
Yeah, I kind of hope the same too. I actually hope that we just there is something about loneliness and the silence that is associated with that. I feel like Rey's introduction is not just one of the great introductions in Star Wars, but really one of the great introductions like in film. I dare people to find scenes that are like this, where it is several minutes unbroken without dialogue.
Yes.
It is visual storytelling at its best. The music is also helping you a little bit, because when you first see her, as she's kind of scavenging around, and Obi-Wan looks like he's kind of doing a similar job, scavenging parts out in the wastelands of Tatooine. But yeah, when you see Rey, you realize the loneliness of that existence. And one of the things that I remembered about that is it's again, it's one of the best scenes in that movie, is how much time you actually sit with that character, from watching Rey do her work to watching Rey bring the parts back in, deliver the parts, clean them, look at a person who is likely going to be her if she doesn't change her life. She sees an older woman that is a model for what Rey could ultimately end up and become. She gets her small meal, returns back to her home. We watch her prepare it. We see how many ticks that she has on the wall. All of that entire scene is great because you land there, you spend all this time with her, and the entire time she's not talking to herself. The only thing that I thought would be interesting if Obi-Wan is talking to anybody is and it's funny because Obi-Wan Ewan McGregor also played Jesus in a movie that is similar to this. Is
With a lot of the fake trailers that came out
like 6 months ago,
like, dude, that's a different movie.
But the I wouldn't mind, because this was an idea that they didn't do in Return of the Jedi, is the entire time of Return of the Jedi, in the opening, and they filmed a little bit of this. You can see it now in deleted scenes, but Vader is harassing Luke through the Force. Like, he's spending all this time talking to Luke through the Force, and Luke has to ignore it. And I think it'd be interesting if there was someone who is like that is possibly even driving Obi-Wan crazy. But I'm okay if that doesn't happen. I'm okay if it's just Obi-Wan's quiet life. I love this whole stay hidden concept. Again, who's he saying that to?
Right.
If it's not someone who's in his brain, right? Stay hidden. That line is there.
I'm actually wondering if who he's talking to is the Beast of Burden, that creature that he's walking with. If he's like at his hut, because it's not canon, but in the Kenobi series, I have the book back here someplace. I was trying to find the name. They do describe what this creature's name is, or what type of creature it is. And I'm wondering, like, he has a building someplace that he lives in that he's recovering and whatever else, and he's first setting up to live there in that book. And I'm wondering if it's something like that, where he talks to that creature, like he petting the creature and feeding it, and like finds himself just, I got to talk to somebody, and you're right here, and like reminiscing about things that have happened. Something I did want to say is kind of going back to the very opening scene. Yeah. Is a lot, obviously opening with the two sons. I really noticed in that opening scene where you see him in the distance. We don't start even with a close up. We start with a close up of rock in front of us with pebbles on it and some sand behind that, and he's off in the distance, kind of riding right next to the cliff face, and he's just kind of like sauntering slowly. And what I thought was interesting about that scene is two things. One is it was very reminiscent in the foreground for me of the scene in Man of Steel when Henry Cavill finally is trying to teach himself how to fly, and puts his knuckles down, and you see the pebbles or the ice blocks on the ground start to shake and lift a little bit, and then he takes off. The vibration right there in that moment, like dust or sand coming through, really reminded me of that scene. It was very like a precipice, like we're on the precipice of something else happening at that moment. But in addition to that, I noticed that to me was him in the distance, starting off that scene with him in the distance there, to me was like a metaphor and foreshadowing for what is going to come in this. That Obi-Wan is at a distance. Everything for Obi-Wan's life right now is at a distance. He's distanced from Luke. He can't be near them. Stays away. He's distanced from the Force. He's distanced from his previous life. Like, everything about his life is at a distance at this point. And I really loved how in that scene, like, it reinforces for you that he is separate and away from everything else that's happening.
Yeah, I really like that. I gotta say that when they cut to, and he's talking, and he says, stay hidden, we lost, all these things. Just like what you said, he sounds resigned. He sounds committed to being, and then you see him as this kind of like watchful protector of Luke. And I gotta say, like, when I saw the little kid Luke, like looking like he's like pod racing or something with the goggles and everything, I was like, this is great. This is a really cool story.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to not feel a sense of nostalgia and excitement over things that when I was a kid I used to think about, like, well, what was Obi-Wan up to? Or, what was happening on Tatooine? Luke seems to know him because he says, I wonder if that's old Ben, if he's related to old Ben Kenobi. And I always thought it was funny how quickly Owen says, I told you to stay away from that wizard. It's like, I love that we get to see a little bit of that. I think it was great how episode 3 ended, where you get your Harry Potter scene, so to speak, where he drops off Luke, even though I'd love to see the nature of that conversation. Hey, you don't know me.
Right?
But
like not just the thing that we saw at the end of Revenge of the Sith, where he shows up, steps off the speeder, hands him a baby, and they're like, "Oh, thanks, a baby," and he's like,
yeah, "Baby,
see ya." He gets on a speeder, bounces, and they're like, "Oh, look, it's very cute. I guess we have a baby now." Like,
yeah,
I get the interaction, but I'm like, I'm with you. I want to see, like, I'm sure that interaction was like had to be choppy, because that would be like, "Hi, so I have a child. Would you like it? Because I'm a random dude who just showed up out of the desert on a speeder who's giving you a kid."
Oh no. Okay, so there's a scene that I'm expecting. And when I mean expecting, I mean like I expect this to be in the movie. I'm sorry, in the show, which is Obi-Wan gets caught by Owen watching the property.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm sure that's
and Owen
happen.
is like, "What are you doing here?"
Dude.
And he's like, I just came to check on things, make sure everything's fine. And I've got to keep you safe. And Owen says something to the effect of, "You're the reason why we're not safe." You being around us is not safe. You should leave us alone if you want this kid to grow up. I'd love to even hear the argument of, what, you think you can train him better than his father, who you also knew as a boy? Like, what is your end game here? I'd love that confrontation.
Yeah, and then you like you saying, I hadn't even thought about that, and then you combine what you just described with the scene where that new Inquisitor that we haven't seen in Rebels, anywhere else, she shows up and she's in the town, and she's kind of like, we see the previous scene, someone's been hung, and then we cut to her. Yep. I don't know if they're two different scenes entirely and they just splice them together. That would be great editing. Hopefully they're actually the same scene. And she's kind of making a proclamation to the city, and Owen's standing there, arms akimbo, like just in deep contemplation, watching the scene play out. We see someplace else in the trailer where she actually does kind of come face to face with him. And he is playing off well, but like, I could absolutely see that scene that happened along with an interaction like you just described, even if what the interaction you described is in flashback, where it goes back to that sort of thing, or some interaction happening in the past between the two of them that leads up to Obi-Wan hiding off in the distance someplace and whatever, and Owen's being confronted with things like, dude, you are making these people come here. You need to go away.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love for this to build. There's a scene in The Last Jedi, which I've always really liked, which is the protracted discussion about what it is to fail. And, Jeff and I work in the tech industry, and to some extent, we often talk about failure, that failure is this great teacher, that victory teaches you nothing and is fleeting, but failure is the greatest of teachers. And I've always liked that scene in The Last Jedi, and I love the whole idea of that is the problem for us as mentors. They grow beyond what we are. It's like it's this amazing like reflection on what it is to be a mentor, what it is to fail as a mentor, and then to learn from your mistakes. And Obi-Wan is in the exact same boat. And that's why I kind of would love a scene between Owen and Obi-Wan that's like, you're the reason why we're in danger. You persisting here. Mm-hmm. I don't want you around us. Also, what is your end game? is your end game to train this kid? Because didn't you fail doing that the last time? Isn't that why we're in this position the last time? It's your fault. Like, I think there is something to that argument that could be put to Obi-Wan and really make Obi-Wan address that. Yeah, I think there's something there.
What you're describing is sort of a sped up version of conversation to the Dumbledore that like Minerva, Gonagall, and others had with Dumbledore about you've raised this kid for slaughter. Like you've raised, that's what you've done, or you've put this kid in a position to be killed. Like that's it. You just raised him to be killed. And I could see something like that playing out, except in this case, Owen would be calling out Obi-Wan far earlier in the story. Like, dude, no, I see what's happening here. I'm not waiting until this kid is in his teens. I'm now. Like, what do you think you're doing? I think that would be. Yeah, that would be very interesting.
Yeah, because as you all know, and I've talked about this on previous episodes, I think Obi-Wan is the greatest villain of the Star Wars series.
Hot take.
Hot take. And by the way, like that's not to say that I love Obi-Wan. Yeah, exactly. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Sorry, I had a better one. I apologize. Here.
Oh yeah, see exactly. Like I'm a big fan. Like this is I'm gonna watch this show, but I think that Obi-Wan, if you ever want an example of gaslighting, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's a line that he says to Luke. He says it to his face, which is the Emperor knew, as I knew, that if Anakin was to have any offspring, they would be a threat to him. And this is like, there's strategy to this. Luke is metered out only so much knowledge. Luke is metered out only information on a need to know basis. And even Luke gets upset about it. And he's like, what? It's bad that I know the truth. And it's like, oh no, it's bad that, it's not ready for the burden where that's Yoda. But it's still a thing where it's like, Obi-Wan is a gray character by the time we meet him. He straight up lies to Luke's face and says, your father was killed by, by an apprentice of mine named Darth Vader. It is legitimately like one of my favorite discussion points about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so I'm okay with seeing the Obi-Wan character become a little grayer, a little bit more like he is a practiced liar by the time we see him. And he, even when he says to Luke, many of the truths we cling to are held by our point of view. I didn't lie to you, Luke. I just told you the truth from a certain point of view. Could you imagine telling anybody that? Could you imagine telling your wife that? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't lie to you. It was the truth from a certain point of view.
Yeah, that conversation's going to go really well.
Yeah, exactly. And so my point about this is that I'd love to see the complexity of the Obi-Wan character. He doesn't need to be so heroic because by the time we see him, he is run down and he's learned to live his life differently. Still with that Jedi code, which is brought up in one of my favorite lines, which I'm sure you heard it too.
Oh, yes. We'll get to that. We'll get there. I just wanted to call out quickly, Jared Austin Pants and Darren Moser. Thank you both for being here. And Darren, thank you so much for the extra sub. We really appreciate it. Thank you. That's awesome. And I hope you're both enjoying the stream. We do this because we love it. I wanted to get to that. So in the next, like one of the follow-up scenes, when you see the whatever, I don't even know what type of ship it is, but the ship flying up to the Inquisitorius. And when it flies up, what's interesting is the first 4 times I watched this trailer, I was like, oh my God, Palpatine, he's saying the line about the way you hunt Jedi is with patience, or whatever his exact line is. So I turned on YouTube, it's like 20 minutes before our stream, to watch and just take some additional notes. And apparently I had closed captioning turned on. I didn't intend to. It's not Palpatine. It's the Grand Inquisitor.
Yes, it's the Grand Inquisitor.
I didn't realize it because the voice sounded... I'm like, oh my God, is that Palpatine saying this? Because that's impactful. But no, it's the Grand Inquisitor. I'm so glad that I know that now because it makes his other appearances in the trailer hit even more home. Like, he is the person leading this. Even though we may see Vader in here somewhere, that he is the main antagonist that we're going to have to worry about, which also really well, I think, very nicely connects it with what we've seen in Star Wars Rebels. That
So
when we first saw that, the two things get really nicely connected right there.
I've got to ask you now. I've got my thoughts on this, but I want to ask you this question. And and it sounds like I have an opinion, or I'm trying to pepper it with this question. What do you think of the look of the Grand Inquisitor?
Okay. I'm fine with it. It looks great. It's realistic. It's exactly what you would expect. I saw this message come up so many different times about, well, his head should have been elongated, or they should have done the things and the stuff and the whatever. I'm like, gear down, big shifter. When I went back and looked, if you watch the movies and you watch the Revenge of the Sith, when Obi-Wan goes to that planet, yes, a couple of those characters you see have elongated heads. But if you go back and watch Rebels, when we see Star Wars Rebels where the Grand Inquisitor first shows up, and people are like, well, see, look, he has an elongated head. Yes, and so does basically every other character in Star Wars Rebels. Kanan Jarrus, elongated head. Thrawn, elongated. The only person in any of the animated series who really doesn't would be, like in the originals, the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan and others have rounder faces, but in the Star Wars Rebels, with a couple exceptions like Ezra and Sabine, most of the human characters have a lot like this. And it was the stylistic choice of how they drew the character. They have elongated heads, not immensely, but they're not rotund like most people's heads are, most humans' heads are. And so I'm like, it's totally fine. For two reasons. One is I don't care. Like I genuinely, I've told this to friends of mine. Like you've heard this before. Like I have like 5 Fs to give every day. I'm not giving one of those for this. I'm not, because this is just not that important at all. For me, it's not that important. I'm not going to give a crap about whether this person's head was elongated. My second problem with the idea of doing that is it would have to be prosthetics. If you want to do it the way they showed it in the original movie, it's going to have to be prosthetics. It is rare to see prosthetics, especially from a character that's going to be performing a lot of action, and make it real looking. That's hard. It is not easy. I mean, even look at Ahsoka when she first showed up in The Mandalorian, and her, as a Togruta, her head tails, not head tails, but whatever the Togruta call it, even hers at that point, like in Rebels, when Rebels ends, we see her and she's standing there with a staff and a robe, and her mantras, or whatever they're called, are really tall and elongated, like a lot of the Togruta are. But in the live action series, they're not. And they admitted in the making of, like, it's way too hard.
Yeah.
And so they did the spirit of what they were supposed to look like. I know I'm going to this long thing about this, but for me, I don't care. Like I seriously, it doesn't take away from the show in any way, shape, or form for me. I see him on screen and it's like Grand Inquisitor, but it's Grand Inquisitor. Like I don't question it. Like, well, maybe it's not because his head's not 3 inches taller. Like, I don't know. Is that actually who that? No, of course that's who it is. Like, I can see it right there. Sure. If I stare at it a bit and I see, okay, yes, it's not, but that's not those sorts of details in some cases. There are some where if you made Kiabi-Mundi and you did Kiabi-Mundi with my size head, yeah, I'd be like, I'm calling bullshit on that. That's wrong. Because his character, the race, literally has a head that's this tall with multiple like ridges and hair. I mean, that's one thing. That like this exaggerated, like making an Ithorian but without the huge head, like that wouldn't work.
Yes.
Or a Mon Calamari where the head's just perfectly round as opposed to being like angled and squid-like and shells, because that's what the creature looks like. In this case, I'm like, way longer answer than you're probably looking for, but like I am totally like, I could not care less about the shape of that person's head in this show.
It's a Klingon without forehead bumps. Check out Discovery season 1. Honestly, all of the original series of Star Trek. But no, I agree with you on that. And I agree with you entirely on, I could care less about I know this is gonna sound funny. I could care less that it's like, oh, it doesn't look like the Rebels, right? And my main reason why was because when we talked in the last couple episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, I'm sure you remember that I was constantly bringing up, okay, when is Barzini coming out? there's got to be some Don Barzini character, because I kept expecting the Book of Boba Fett to be like The Godfather, and that the real people we were dealing with, those were the Tatalias, by the way, spoilers for The Godfather, and that it's Don Barzini that is really the person who's like pulling the strings to try to edge out the Corleone family. And as I said back in those episodes, I said, I am expecting some awesome actor to come out and be the real threat. And I said, you know, because when we watched The Mandalorian, the first actor that we met, and actor director, Werner Herzog. Oh, and that guy has like an amazing voice. And I mean, yes. the things that he says are insane. None of the things that he said were in the script. I can guarantee it.
Yes.
No one says things like, you know, would you like a libation to celebrate the ending of our shared narrative? Oh my God. No one says that stuff. Only
who
Werner
can forget
Herzog.
The line? Like the line that became the line for all of The Mandalorian, everybody knows at this point, is not just the line, but how I would like to see the baby. Like the way, I'd like to see the baby. Nobody can not, like, you hear that line, you're like, oh no, that's The Mandalorian, of course. I've never watched the show, but I know that's The Mandalorian. Like his voice saying that.
Oh no, the whole bounty hunting is a complicated profession. These are great lines. And he's a great actor. He delivered them really well. And then when you're like, wow, Werner Herzog's great. This is great. Then Giancarlo Esposito shows up, and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, he's playing Moff Gideon. And this guy exudes that type of crazy, you know, like he ratcheted up all the tension, and suddenly all those scenes got super tense because he's a dude that's in control, and he's violent, and he's calm. And anytime you have that trifecta, someone who's in control, who is wildly violent and calm, that is like, man, that's danger. And so where I'm getting to with this is, when I saw the guy, and I don't know who the actor is that's playing the Grand Inquisitor. I don't know this. I should have done my research, but I didn't.
We have the internet. I can help you with that.
Okay, cool. Because I will say this. I heard his voice. And I heard the key to hunting Jedi is patience. And that voice drew me right in. And when he said, the Jedi code is like an itch, and how well that line is delivered, I could care less if he's not aligned. I am more interested in seeing good actors do good work than I am in, like, does this match the animated version of a given show. I mean, again, Rosario Dawson is an amazing Ahsoka. And I wasn't going to be like, I don't know if they got all of the look, and no, I could care less. Rosario Dawson did a great job. Likewise, this actor who is the Grand Inquisitor has amazing stage presence, has that kind of cool, calm, collected voice. And yeah, lines that he was delivering were so great. That whole, the Jedi code is like an itch. Man, that is such a good line.
It is
such a good line.
The actor's name is Rupert Friend.
Oh my gosh, that's Rupert Friend?
Yes.
Get out.
Nope.
Wow. Congratulations for Rupert Friend being on this show. That
I don't know who
great.
he is. I have no idea who he is. I'm looking at his like bio of like movies he's been in. I'm like, I don't know any of these movies at all.
He's been in, okay, so I could be wrong. I could be thinking about a different actor. If I'm right, Rupert Friend has been in Homeland. He's formerly was in Homeland, and he was also in the Young Victoria. I could be wrong on that.
He was in, Young Victoria, Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah,
the death of Stalin.
He's a dangerous dude in not the Young Victoria. He's a dangerous dude in Homeland. And yeah, wow, that is great. I really like that actor. I couldn't see that was him under the makeup. And also I would say that it's hard to get that elongated feature. You know, they deliberately hired Bruce, what's his face from Mad Max, to do that elongated alien look for episode 3. And of course I'm forgetting the actor's name is Bruce something. Someone in the comments, if they've got it, please let me know. But the it's I would rather be able to see the actor's face, to be able to see them be able to emote and act, than, oh man, let's like cake on a ton of prosthetics on them.
Yeah, I agree. I think I understand that there is a time and place for things like prosthetics. I really do, and there is, and I
Yeah,
have absolutely no problem
practical
with it.
effects, love them.
Yeah, absolutely, and I have no problem with practical effects. I think they're a tool that you use to solve a particular problem, as anything is. We've talked about this many times with Lord of the Rings movies, and the addition of CGI, but then also the use of miniatures and bigatures, and they did
Yes.
tons of that. The value of doing those things practically where you can, as opposed to CGI or what have you, it makes all the difference visually when you're watching the story from a visual perspective. And for me, in this particular case, I I think it's sad if they had found a way to do it, it would have satisfied the need of a core group of fans that want to see everything replicated exactly as they saw it and how they remember it. And I understand that. Like, I'm not going to put anybody down for what they like. Of course not. So if you like that, you like the thing that you like. However, and from my perspective only, to me, I would rather have an actor who knows how to play that role and really impact you and really make you feel like you're in it over did they find a way to do prosthetics. So if he, as you said, if Rupert Friend plays that role as you've described in other movies, and that sort of like casual malevolence almost, that to me is far more important than anything they can do visually. Yes, and later we can make a critique saying, oh, you know what, it would have been neat to see that, but did it at the end of the show when we get done with this? I'd love to have some comments from people who felt that way. No, I'd prefer to see that. I'd really love to hear from them. Like, do you feel any differently now? I don't, whether they have to change their mind or not doesn't really matter, but I'm curious to find out if anybody would be willing to join up with us and say, hey, I actually did disagree with you, Jeff, and I felt a certain way at the beginning, but by the end, I'm thinking about this a little bit differently than maybe before, or not. Like, maybe not all. Like, nope, totally, they missed the boat. Needed to be this. I would love to hear from some folks or some input and comments about the distinction between those two things for them after the show wraps.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that too, because I understand how people, again, like, as some people on this show know, I'm a huge Star Trek fan as well, and in
Wait,
both
I'm sorry, you like Star Trek? I totally
exactly
forgot.
what.
Where are we?
What's going on? Yeah, see, look, exactly. So the point that I mean is that I know that it's hard sometimes, especially in both universes, both Star Trek and Star Wars, or even Lord of the Rings. When you've got an idea of something and it creates a lot of commotion sometimes when it's been executed differently. Like the Lord of the Rings recently encountered that when they added a more diverse cast to the Amazon Lord of the Rings series. Star Trek encounters it a lot because as much as Star Trek will say that's not canon, what is really interesting is that they're constantly reshaping aliens all the time. Tellarites look different literally in every series. But in this one, I feel like because Star Wars is starting to expand its universe for the very first time, really, in the last few years. There's more Star Wars content. There's more opportunities for things to fit within canon, and I think that's where the old phrase of there's no one that hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. I feel like this is where this comes from.
Yeah.
Is that and that's why, like, I know there was a bunch of, in the Grand Inquisitor being in the trailer, there was just so much negative reaction that the visual look was different. And by the way, the same thing happened with Cad Bane. With in the Book of Boba Fett, and I thought he looked great.
I thought so too. He looked fantastic. I heard a lot about his skin color being. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. Those things just don't take away. The actor who played Cad Bane and the voice and the behavior, it was Cad Bane, and I'm like, you don't get any closer to a character that came out of an animated series in real life to what we saw. Yes, some things are not going to look exact because they probably don't work on camera. we need to leave it to the directors and the editors and all that to pick how it shows up on screen, because they know that better than any of us. Anybody who wants to armchair direct or produce, go right ahead, but also realize you're not actually in that role. Let's leave it to them to come up with these. Now, do they always execute? No, we've talked about them before, and that's okay. Be critical, but let's be critical or constructive after we see it. Let's let this play out first, and then see how did it affect the story, if at all. Or I mean, maybe it had a positive, maybe it had no impact, maybe it was negative. We don't know. We'll see. I wanted to move forward a little bit further in the trailer because there's so many things that happened really, really quick.
And the move happened, so fast.
Yeah, there was the new Inquisitor that we see that no one seems to. I don't think it's an Inquisitor we've seen before. The woman that we see without a helmet on and what have you. I wrote down a note that when she's in the scene on Tatooine, interacting with people, even in some other places, I don't know why I feel this way. I really don't. But what I wrote for myself is, she brings an air of, and I don't know why, but this is the word that came to me. She brings an air of ignorant malevolence, and for some reason that phrase, those two words were what stuck in my brain. And as I was watching her interactions, what I was really getting the sense of is malevolence or evil that's almost superficial. Like, she's doing it because she's supposed to. She's behaving like, even in the Inquisitorius, when they're all around that table for a brief moment, all the other Inquisitors are sitting down. She's the only one that's standing up. I don't know what that means, but there's these things that to me that were very telling about that make her stand out among the others. Sometimes that standout could be they're a standout, like they stand proud of everybody else, like for positive reasons. But it also made me think that I wrote down, I'm not sure why I feel that, as if she's still questioning her role and why. And I don't know why I get that, but that's a sense that I felt seeing in that scene, even when she interacts with Owen. Like, she's super intense with Owen. But what's interesting is when we see the Grand Inquisitor do the same sort of thing, he's intense, but it's not an intense, like, I'm going to get in your face. Like, no, you're going to come to me and we're going to do this, but I don't have to. It's a situation of, like, his character doesn't act like he has to prove himself. She's kind of, feels to me like she's sort of acting like she's having to prove herself, that she's the bad guy, that she's here and you need to listen to her.
Oh yeah, I always think you have to have that kind of like dual bad guy structure. You've got you typically have the person who is the physical threat, and then you've got the person who's like an existential threat. You know what I mean? And I think the Grand Inquisitor is the existential threat. Like, I am strategizing my plan to defeat you. Again, the whole like,
oh yeah,
they leave compassion in their wake. They can't help it. I mean, this is great. Ugh. This is great. And by the way, it's the opposite thing. Like, as he's describing the Jedi code and what Jedi are and what Jedi do, and you see Obi-Wan traveling with a group of just downtrodden people that are all being oppressed, you see the mimic of all of that in the same way with the code of the dark side, which is it's oppression that they leave in their wake versus compassion. It is the sadness, it is loneliness, it is all of these things. Destruction is what they leave. And I liked how those two things were being mirrored as the Grand Inquisitor is telling that. But I think, to your point, I think the younger, the female Inquisitor that, again, we don't know her identity yet, I think she is the immediate physical threat. And the reason why I think they're trying to setting that up is because she's already located on Tatooine. She'll be likely the first person that Obi-Wan has to run up against. And again, I think you need to have, even if it's in the Outer Rim, which Tatooine is, you need to have someone who is moving the story along. So you have to have a local threat. The Grand Inquisitor can't just be like, well, I guess I'll stop on Tatooine. So you have to have someone that kind of kickstarts the story. And I feel like that is this younger Inquisitor character who's out in Tatooine, who's maybe even the reverse of why am I blanking on her name in The Mandalorian? Gina.
Gina Carano.
Yeah, Gina Carano's character.
Yeah.
Cara.
Cara Dune.
Cara Dune. Thank you. I feel like she's like the Sithy sheriff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The dark side sheriff.
Sheriff,
yeah, this is a hard thing to say. It's like Sally sold seashells. But I think she has to be the one that gets the plot going. That produces an immediate threat. But yeah, I really liked the use of multiple threats for Obi-Wan, and obviously Owen feels that threat, and you gotta know that Owen's gonna be like, get out of here. No one, you know what I mean? Like, leave us alone. Michael Beretti said that Michael Beretti, who runs a really great YouTube channel called Belated Media, did a really great review on what the prequels could have been, and one of his ideas was always that it was a lost opportunity to not have Owen be a major character in the prequels, and that Owen takes Luke not because he's just the kid's family, but because he's the only one that's like, I'll raise this boy as to be just a regular person. You all want to take him to make him something else. And I'd love to be able to see that part of Owen and Beru, who are like, we just want to have a simple life, not because we're selfish, but because that's what this kid deserves.
Yes.
And it will keep him safe.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's gonna be I'm sorry, there's one thing that's been on my mind that I wanted to bring up, but I'm very with you that I want to see. I really hope that we see quite a bit of interaction and tension between Owen and Obi-Wan. That, like, maybe even to the point of like that's what forces Obi-Wan to like leave planet to go do some other things, or forces him to like come in contact with the Inquisitor in some way, and then tries to leave the planet to get someplace else. I don't know. I'm curious to see how they play it out. But I want to say there's a scene towards the end where I don't know what planet we're on. Maybe it's Nar Shaddaa or something, where you're led to feel that Obi-Wan and this other Inquisitor are sort of circling each other. One's chasing the other, trying to find each other. And there's a scene where Obi-Wan's hiding behind like a box and being shot at. And then a moment later, see a different box, or maybe the same box, break open and birds fly out. And my favorite part is my first thought was, those are convors. Like, those are convors, which is the bird that follows Ahsoka around. We see that in partly in the Clone Wars with the daughter in the Mortis Gods. So the daughter, there's a convor that follows her around. That's like a manifestation of the daughter, or the light side of the Force, and follows her through all of Rebels. We see it. We even see it in both the Ahsoka show. There's a convor up on a tree branch where she first encounters Mando. I don't think I noticed it in the scenes in the Book of Boba Fett. I don't remember if I saw it there, but to me, I think those are convors, and it made me think that I have two hopes. They're kind of diametrically opposed from each other, but I hope both for very different reasons. The first one I hope is that all we see are convors, and we're like, oh, there's a relationship to Ahsoka here. There's a nod to Ahsoka, or maybe in that same vein we see we know we're going to see Hayden Christensen as he's confirmed as Anakin in clone armor in a flashback. We're going to see something to that effect, or Hayden has confirmed that we're going to see something like that. So it'd be really cool if we saw some version of Ahsoka maybe played out. That would be really cool. But also, kind of on the opposite side, I'm also kind of hoping we don't see Ahsoka in any way in the show other than the representation by the convors, because I love the nod of that to the convor and that whole line of the Mortis Gods and all that. But I also like that if she's not there, I really would like that, because it would reinforce that they don't actually know each other's alive. They don't, because in other series we don't believe they actually know each other's alive. But I think more importantly, as I heard recently, Dave Filoni say that they really want to make all these stories bring every single audience, and you and I have talked about this many times, that bring any audience in. And so if you have too much of that interconnecting, we're like, oh, here's Ahsoka, and if you've never seen Ahsoka, you don't know who she is or what her significance is, it gives you something that's like, wait, hold on, who's this character? Like, it does great fan service, but to everybody else, like, I don't, okay, is she important? Are we supposed to, are you going to talk about her? And if you don't, and spend a lot of time with her, then they're like, wait, hold on, but you just brought. I'm confused. Who is this other person that you just brought in? So I'm excited because it'd be interesting to see in a flashback to see Ahsoka. But if no one's ever watched Clone Wars, you wouldn't understand why she is there, and it wouldn't really make sense. Other than Anakin had a Padawan. Wait, what? Anakin had a Padawan? We didn't know that. No one knew. If you've never watched the Clone Wars, you wouldn't know. So I like both ideas. I'm kind of more leaning toward. I hope they're just Clone Wars and sort of a nod to Ahsoka, but not showing her anywhere, because I think that would actually play out better to reinforce the interaction between Obi-Wan and Anakin. Obviously, if she was there, and the interactions between Anakin and Obi-Wan would also be reinforced for different reasons, but you wouldn't. It would be hard to explain that to a person who is not already a fan of the Clone Wars and other things that had Ahsoka in them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I think there's always a balance that you got to strike, because it's like there's and also too, by the by, like some of the best things that Star Wars does is not showing stuff. Many Bothans died to deliver things to get this information. Like that's just like a line that's just said in Return of the Jedi. And it's great. It's said in Return of the Jedi, and like how they got the plans for the second Death Star. And this is where it's like, or I'm sorry, that's not the plans for the second Death Star. That's the information about the Emperor being on the second Death Star. It's lines like that that are really great, because they're just said, and we don't need to know any more than that. Even when Obi-Wan talks about his history with Anakin in Return of the Jedi, it's brief, and it's just kind of, it's just there. We don't need to spend too much time, I think, making all of these stories have interconnections. I will tell you what, though, I think this show can learn a lot from what made Mandalorian great, and what made the Book of Boba Fett problematic. And you brought up something already, which is the flashbacks. I think you got to be careful not to overdo the flashbacks.
Agreed.
I think it takes, unless it's to serve the story. Like if, for example, Obi-Wan daydreams. That would be because he's so lonely, and then gets caught off guard about stuff because he's daydreaming.
Oh, your comment earlier about him, like an interaction of him watching Luke from a distance and Owen catching him. That would be a great place for him to be daydreaming about remembering an interaction with Anakin when he was younger, or something else like that, and then gets caught off guard, and they connect. He's remembering this because he's remembering his connection here, and then also gets caught off by, oh crap, Owen's here, shoot, like something like that. Yeah.
I mean, again, I think that you could learn a lot from that. Like Boba Fett did too many of these like back to tank memory moments, and it's just like, okay, we got it. Like you can't just use that as a narrative thread all of the time. Right. I think it's important, because I think every time you're doing a story, even a story like this, you should be anticipating that you've got an audience that's coming in that has no background. So that's fine. Like show the background. And I think that even the prequels are missing some of this. Why are these people such good friends? Why do they care about each other so much? Yeah, the Clone Wars exists, and that's why we can see that they're so close. But I think that it's good to use it, but don't rely on it too much. Also, a thing that they did well in this trailer is that we did not see Darth Vader.
Right.
I thought that's great.
That's what the breathing in the very end.
That's right.
It. That's all we get.
That's it. Yes. And it's just a little tag. And Rogue One, by the way, just had Vader appear right at the end of a trailer. And even then they were kind of like did a couple of reshoots to add more Vader stuff in when they realized, oh wow, we should really like do this up. But likewise, I wouldn't rely so much on the Vader crutch. And Agreed. I think that they had a good division of that between what was done in The Mandalorian, which was let's explore some new characters, let's spend that time there, let's not get so hung up in the the things of other movies. I understand that Boba Fett coming from the movies, they wanted to spend a lot of time to try to, Jabba and this, and now we're on Tatooine. We're on Tatooine for a ton of episodes. Oh my gosh. And I guess that's the other thing is get Obi-Wan off Tatooine as soon as possible. That's why I'm hoping that all that stuff with the young Inquisitor happens in the first episode, and Obi-Wan's like, I got to get out of here because Owen is like, I got, get out of here. And there's maybe a reason for them to go. Maybe Obi-Wan's getting hunted and he's got to get off of the planet. Get him off of Tatooine as fast as the story allows. Because that was the thing that I loved about The Mandalorian was we're on this planet. Now we're over on that planet. Now we're over here. And that's a thing that is from the Star Wars movies and even the Clone Wars and Rebels and everything else that I like, which is the nature of being able to travel through the universe. Like, take advantage of that. Like, so great. So great.
Well, we've spent so much time in various movies and in these stories on Tatooine, like in general, through all these different properties. And then you add in Jakku with Rey and that whole story. If we even took it a step beyond what you're describing, which is not that same thing that I just said, I totally agree with you. But even beyond that, we've been on Tatooine a lot in Star Wars.
Yeah,
we need to go to some other places. We've got to go to some other places in live action. It can still come back to Tatooine. That's no problem, and it should. Obviously, it will. But I'm with you that it can't just leave Tatooine just for the sake of it. Like you said, it's got to fit with the story. But I agree. We need to get him off planet pretty quickly to see how does he deal with, because it's really story-wise, it's really easy to conceive of Obi-Wan living and hiding on Tatooine and finding someplace to hide. It's a big desert planet. Like, the dude can crawl into a hole and you will never ever find him. Like, okay, there's no other than a couple of small cities across the entire planet. There's basically nothing. The Junlin Wastes, he could go just disappear there forever. So getting him off planet also creates a massive level of vulnerability for him, because now he's going to stick out. As the Inquisitor said, they can't help it. He's going to stick out like a thumb, whether he wants to or not. He's going to help people. He's going to do things that are going to draw attention to him. And as soon as he touches the Force, these dark side users who are actively trained to find that, they're going to be triggered by this. And that's what we need to see. It's not just the other planets. It's that we need to see him unintentionally triggering these things, which is what leads the Grand Inquisitor to say what he said. That is going to make sense. But if he just stays on Tatooine, it's a crapshoot at that point. It really is. And it does. I don't think it works. It becomes a very different type of show. And I don't think it's one that most people would really enjoy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I know that we're coming up to the end of our time here. So I'd like to ask you, you've seen this trailer. We both made a ton of notes on it. Of course, this brought in so much feeling for us, from the music to the acting, to the dialogue that was used. Hope survives. That ends with the phrase "hope survives." What is one thing you want to see from this series, and what is one thing you do not want to see in this series?
Jokingly, I'll start with jokingly. I want him to say hello there.
Oh yeah,
I want him to say hello there.
Yeah.
But realistically, actually, the thing that I want to see and the thing that I don't want to see are actually the same. I'm doing this a little odd tonight. I want to see him ignite his lightsaber at least one time, but I also don't want him to, because it's the whole purpose of Obi-Wan in this show is to be hiding and to be subtle. And the moment he ignites a lightsaber, no matter what else he does, because he'll never do, I don't think he'd ever do, conceivably, a big force move of some kind. Grab a ship, pull something down. Like, we're not going to see, a Star Killer sort of like stop a Star Destroyer. We're not going to see that sort of thing happen from Obi-Wan. It's never been his way. It's not going to be his way now. Him igniting a lightsaber one time, like in the last ditch effort, I got to do it. Like Kanan Jarrus coming out as a Jedi and Rebels, like piecing things together, say, I was never going to do this, but here we go. Like, oh my God, you're a Jedi, or you have a lightsaber. I would love to see that, because it would be amazing to see. I also really don't want to see it, because I want to see him. I want to see the character really, and us all have to realize that how do I best say this? The moment on the Death Star first Death Star,
Mm-hmm.
when he battles Darth Vader, I want that to be sacred. I want that to be the place we see him ignite his lightsaber to duel somebody else. And it almost kind of diminishes it. The idea diminishes it a bit to me by having him interact with or battle other people with his lightsaber just willy-nilly in the story. I'm sure they could do it really well. So I don't put down Deborah Cho and her ability to make it look beautiful. I'm sure it would. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
also kind of like, I also don't want to see that happen. Like, I want to see him find any other way he can fight other than having to pull his lightsaber out, because I don't know, something about that feels off to me. How about you?
Yeah, I actually agree with you there. I really don't want to see like a crazy Jedi stuff from Obi-Wan. I like the sneaking around Obi-Wan.
Yes.
I like that guy. I like the really smart Obi-Wan who's like has to use his brain to really like solve
The
things out.
negotiator. Like
The negotiator, exactly. And I would love for so there's a couple of things that I'd like for this to sync up with. There's a couple of things that I hope that it doesn't. I'm okay if like a Bale and Tilly's connection occurs, but very loosely and nothing more than that. Like if it's just like, hey, how's everything going? By the way, our life here is great. How is it on Tatooine?
or like a
I
fulcrum,
wouldn't.
like a fulcrum
Yeah,
call out where
exactly.
the
Like,
voice shows up and he responds briefly, and that's kind of it or something.
yeah, I wouldn't be against something like that. I don't need to see him doing a crazy amount of lightsaber battles. Like, what I really would like to see is, Vader says to Tarkin, he says, my old master. I feel my old master, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and of course, like Tarkin even knows his like full name, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's long dead. You're all that's left of the Jedi are long extinct. You're all that's left of their religion. And for him to say that, I'd love to see a reason why no one would be looking for Obi-Wan. Like, I'm actually hopeful that this series ends with everybody like, yeah, and we got him. Kenobi
Oh
is
yeah,
Kenobi's
interesting.
dead. And that's why Tarkin's like, Obi-Wan Kenobi? No, man, he's not here. And the fact that he can be, Ben Kenobi, old Ben. I'd really like to see something that happens like that. So that way, when you get the great line in Star Wars, which you're referring to right before that lightsaber battle, is you should not have come back. When you left, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Like, I would love that to be more codified. And
Yeah.
Vader is still learning the ways of the dark side. Vader is still learning his pathway through there. At this point, Luke looks like he's like 5 years old. So maybe like, Darth Vader's only had about 5 years, maybe 10 years. I don't know. Maybe it's 10 years old. I don't know if they've given the exact date of when this is happening. But you could say that Vader still is a learner in the dark side. And so, yeah, I would really love to like, I really like that. If they could build in that.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Right on, man. Well, this was fantastic. I love this. It's as people have joined us before. Robert and Rich and Paul, who've been here before, and even Lance, who was in here a little bit earlier. Joseph, thanks for being here. I know you've seen this too. We like to focus on the story stuff, but for anybody who joined who hasn't been with the Kessel chat before, we focus very much on the storytelling side of things. So if this breakdown, we really wanted to spend our time thinking about this breakdown of the trailer from the perspective of how it sort of made us feel, how it advanced the story, where it didn't advance the story, what that's going to mean in a larger perspective for Star Wars overall. We hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed already, we'd love you to subscribe. I don't have my do I have it? I think I'm going to break everything if I do it. No, I'll break everything. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. But we'd love you to subscribe on YouTube. It'd be super helpful. We've got a list of topics we're going to be running through over the next few weeks, leading up to, we're calling it the Road to Obi-Wan, or the Road to Kenobi. So we've got this other a series of videos that we're going to be doing, or live streams over the next month or so as we get towards Obi-Wan, which should be a lot of fun. We're also talking. We've researched. We're going to be talking again about some new videos and stuff we want to put out. So that's going to be fantastic. So yeah, please check back. We'd love to have you here. It's been a great one, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we're really excited about this. We'd love to hear your comments on what you are looking forward to. What's one thing you would like to see from the show, Kenobi, and what is one thing that you don't want to see? What's a character you hope does not appear? By the way, bring back Jar Jar. This is your chance, man. Make try to figure out how to make Jar Jar cool. I dare you. But no, in all seriousness, like, I'd love to hear people's characters they don't want to see, even if it would be great to see this character, if it's a young version of a character, if it's a different character, great. But I would say, hey, you still got Jimmy Smits, so it's that time where you can like have Bail Organa show up and be able to say, wow, I think I got the better end of this deal. I'm just chilling here on my awesome paradise planet.
Yeah, exactly. With all the money I could ever hope for.
Yeah, exactly. I hope you like sand.
Because you got a lot of it, buddy.
Yeah. But can't wait to hear your comments. And then every week, as Jeff said, we're gonna be talking about this. So yeah, we're really excited. And then we'll be doing post episode reviews for every one of the Kenobi episodes. And we'll be doing like we did with Book of Boba Fett. We'll be giving them a letter grade.
Yep, absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great night, morning. We'll see you soon.
Hey, bye, everybody.